And we're recording. All right. All right. All right. Preet, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy. I guess enough. But I'm doing very good, considering everything what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very unique, let's say unique 2020. So,
Yeah,
Preet, I really want to thank you for joining us. BJJ and Brews kind of originated because our gym ended up having a we started developing a tradition of generally on Saturdays bringing a few beers to the mats, training hard, and then sitting around having a few beers and chit chatting. So after a while, we realized a lot of these conversations we had were the kind of conversations that we thought maybe some other people would enjoy listening to, and that's kind of the origin and genesis of the podcast. And for a guy like you, I know I certainly would be probably sipping on a beer and then starting to ask you questions about defensive postures and okay, how come the crossface doesn't work here? And it'd probably be more hands on. So that's stuff I won't be able to get into as much with you because we're remote. We can certainly try at some point. But what I listened to a lot of your podcasts that you've done recently, and you've talked about teaching methodologies, you've talked about defensive postures. But one thing I haven't heard, which is really the first question I would have asked you anyway, and if I missed the podcast, I apologize, but is more about your origins. How did you get into jiu-jitsu in the first place, and what the scene was like in Estonia of all places with jiu-jitsu when you started? So how did you get into jiu-jitsu, and what was jiu-jitsu like when you got started?
Oh, so uh, let's say it's a long story, but we have time, so I go even maybe back than you expect. But so I played basketball since third grade till the ninth. I was pretty obsessed. I always tell that I didn't have much friends, and basketball was my escape. And I was a little bit overweight. I probably right now also, but in the school, overweight a little bit. It's a little bit chubby. So, but I played basketball. I was. It's weird to say because it's. I don't think it's bragging, but I was Estonia's best player in my age group. I was a lefty, and also so that was my escape, or probably from bullying and all those things because people needed me. So they kind of left me alone in that sense. And then after main school, my mom didn't let me go to the high school because my mom is a teacher, a German language teacher, and so she saw guys, having a one notebook for all the classes, and then they didn't study, they just spent time there, and so she didn't want that for me. So she said no, no high school, and she forced me in a good way. She pushed me or something to go to technical school. That was 5 years, and by that time you also had a high school education plus like a job. What I mean, like a college or something, but gives you like a something to you can do something.
Now, when you
Um,
say technical school, just so we're understanding, is technical school would that be a trade skill like welding
no, I
or
actually I was studying telecommunication.
okay?
So basically, like how the waves kind of go around the Earth and how to fix stuff and everything else.
Sounds like the origins of your scientific method.
Yeah. So I wasn't. I got in also without exams because I only have two C's on my high school diploma or whatever certificate, and so I got in. I didn't know that what this was it what I wanted to do. I had no. When you're 14, 15, they ask you what you want to do for the rest of your life. It's like, how the fuck should I know? And so I didn't have any desires, or some people want to go, oh, I would go to my dad's kind of firm or something. I want to be this and that. I had no clue. um, I think it was a good thing actually, but then there was a option to go there, and I took the option. And then I didn't do anything after that. My kind of the basketball stuff kind of disappeared. And then I think in a second year in that school, I found out, or that my couple of my friends were doing aikido and karate and kind of those things. And also, I think my late dad also kind of wanted to make a man out of the son a little bit. I wasn't like a pushover, but clearly I was not good with conflicts and physical conflicts and stuff. So I guess they have more stories. Me coming home and crying and everything else. I don't remember those things. I was pretty young, probably.
Did you have
Somebody
any
did.
siblings?
Sister.
Sister, okay.
Yeah. So 4 years older, and so my dad pushed it, and I think I was 17, and it was I think September, and then next to close, let's say next, but pretty close, close enough for me to go there alone, so to speak. We had a karate school opening, and so I joined that, and kind of I'm really obsessive about things. So and again, I didn't have much social life overall. So that kind of again saved me in that sense that I basically I think before that when I joined the karate in September, I think 3 months or 4 months I trained and I got a split. I trained for my split, so I was like kicking something in my apartment and everything else. So I watched TVs like leg over the shoulder and just stretching all the time. So and I had when I was 18 and 19, I almost had a split, like not a middle split, but front split, like and I could kick people in the head in a middle split and all those. So I was kind of obsessed about Van Damme and all the Bruce Lee's. So my mom always laughed when I was kicking stuff in my room, and she passed the room. I was always laughing. So I remember that, and then but karate, I think it was 2 or 3 times. I think 2 times a week, and it wasn't enough. I had too much free time still, and so my other friend in school was you know friend or person I got along with. I'm pretty picky with the word friend, and so he was doing aikido, so I had time, and let's say my karate was Monday and Wednesday. So then I think Tuesday, Thursday I went to aikido. I did that I think 4 years, and it's all messy, the history, because I don't know chronologically. I don't know when I did what, but I know that aikido and karate was same time, and then strategy happened, that my coach died, and then I was pretty good back then, and they gave the club to me.
So how
So
old were you at the time when they gave you the club?
22 or something like this.
Wow, and this was
And
the karate club or the aikido
yeah,
club, or were they both the same?
no, karate club. Yeah,
Karate club, okay.
aikido was different. So I didn't run the business, but I was just, let's say main coach or something. And I guess it was also strange. It wasn't pure karate in that sense. Our coach was influenced also by the soft styles, and we were doing different kind of even tai chi exercises, and I think I participated even some Tai Chi seminars. I think because I don't know when I did it. Probably after I got the gym for myself, so to speak. That I know I also taught Aikido. Sorry, I taught Tai Chi a couple of years. I was a Tai Chi instructor, and our coach actually was from US, Scott Rodell. It was a Michuan Tai Chi style, and he still visits Estonia. So I did that. I run Tai Chi classes actually. I think twice a week, and then in some point, because our coach also, we did some Wing Chun trapping stuff just for fun of it. It was a Bruce Lee thing. So at some point, I think I took a like a lead, and we all changed to Wing Chun, because that was a kind of like a new thing after karate. Very violent, thumbs to the eye, not kicks, chain punching for a street, and it was very visually attractive, and all the wooden dummies and everything else. Even still this day, I don't have that big of an apartment, but my dream is to just have a wooden dummy in my home as a like just like a clothes hanger, and I still can do pum pum like those things and stuff, pucks out, and it's kind of, if I touch the wooden dummy, I almost giggle. This just emotions are like overwhelming. I think it's so cool. I think the practical stuff, and it's debatable, but just as a visual and a memory, what I can tap to when I touch the wooden dummy, there are pretty good emotions there also. But so Wing Chun, and so it's also like weird. I had a Finnish coach, then some other guy in Estonia got the German coach. the German coach pushed the Finnish coach out because they were same organization. So Europe, Kernspert, the Leonting Wing Chun, so they signed another coach, and so I in long story short, I've changed my coaches in Wing Chun I think 4 or 5 times. There's always some issues I didn't like, so I was always kind of rebel, so to speak, that I didn't like certain things and kind of had my own mind towards things. And then finally, also that other Wing Chun guy in Estonia was a former Sambo guy. So he showed us ground fighting at first. I also remember that really he showed me the first time. I liked it right away. It wasn't like some people get, oh, ground fighting, it's so close. I was like, oh cool, let's do it. And so he did some back in the karate days already. He did some random, maybe one seminar or two seminars a year maybe. So we learned to squeeze the body, the kidneys, like a close guard. You stretch your legs and kind of weird stuff also. And then I remember in some point we did like a knee pads and a wooden floor. We rolled. It was very bone clicking. So I remember randomly those things. And finally, I think we had like a small group doing already like grappling, and then we did still Wing Chun. And then in some point, because the kitchen side, like a backstage or something, we call it in Estonia kitchen side, that you don't see sometimes, because the kitchen side of Wing Chun was a pyramid scheme, basically. And then in some point, I couldn't lie to my students back then. And that was it was 2005 February when I took my students together. I explained everything, what was going on behind the scenes, and then we just left. And then I think 99% people came with me, and we opened a jiu-jitsu club, and we added wrestling and boxing, and officially we opened 3D training 2005 26th May or something.
Now,
So
up until this point, you said you just opened a jiu-jitsu club. You never mentioned jiu-jitsu at all up until this point. So when did you get exposed to the term jiu-jitsu and the fact it exists? You
I,
just mentioned
I,
you did ground fighting with a sambo fighter or a
yeah, but
sambo
I
coach.
think we knew it's jiu-jitsu, and also like chronologically, I have hard times pointing it out because I know in some karate kind of camp we had those summer camps. I know we all watched the VHS tape from Royce Gracie kicking everybody's ass. So
I've heard this. It's so crazy that there's so many stories that involve Hoist Gracie's UFC performance.
so we saw that, we were like, what the fuck? And so we saw that, but I think it was 2004 or 2003 or something. And so there's a no. It should be fun to have the chronological history, but we don't. But that's kind of like a sambo. Then I know jiu-jitsu. Then we started to probably look for stuff, all the bus route. Then kind of videos and all the access to those things. And we visited Finland to compete and stuff. So they had already like a more organized things, like a alliance visiting there, and some Fabio Jurgel and Marcelo Garcia went there. So, but yeah, so 2005 jiu-jitsu, and
Was
then
there any? Was there any? Were there any other jiu-jitsu clubs in Estonia at this point?
no, that was that our like proudly I was the first. Yeah. So some people are debating that maybe a little bit, that some, let's say, some Estonians were living abroad and maybe started also doing jiu-jitsu, but I think in Estonia we started the first. So I kind of, because I was the coach, I was the father figure kind of, and so yeah. And then other Estonians joined, and we had like 3 to 5 people in some school shooting range. Schools had shooting range in Soviet times, and so nobody cleaned those mats, and I still don't know how I'm still alive, but we rolled, we had fun, and also what pushed me towards, I think, MMA and jiu-jitsu was we had I think every month or every other month we had in Wing Chun we had bloody Thursdays, that we put our gear up, masks, MMA gloves, the one we can find, cup, knee shields and stuff, and then we fought on a wooden floor actually. And then the guys that had grappling experience, even a little bit, they had like a enormous chance of winning. And if
What
you see it,
intensity level would you say was happening on these
full
bloody
contact,
fights? Full contact
yeah, on a wooden floor.
on a wooden floor.
So
So
I
these
at least
okay, so we would probably call those smokers over here. It's almost like internal fights, you
yeah.
know.
And we were testing, and then all the Wing Chun cool things, pum pum pum. Those things didn't work so well. And then grabbing somebody from the neck and kneeing them in a face and a body kind of worked. So, and double leg worked, and mount punching and everything. So that also kind of threw how to call it, like a wrench in the system, because everything that we can see, like wrestling, works right away. And they said Wing Chun, we have to train 10 years for it to work. So we were like, that's not okay, I guess. So that kind of started to also, build a doubt that something's wrong. But I still like, Wing Chun as a visual art, and I don't mind if somebody does that art, if they know what they're doing, if they know what it's for, what it's not for, and if they cut all the bullshit. I don't mind that. Social experience, social interaction with people, better than sitting on a couch. Why not? But if they talk about fighting, then we can test and empirically, and then we can see what works.
So
But yeah,
at this time, it sounds like you and your club are acquiring knowledge very ad hoc through videos, through the occasional seminar you attend, right? And then you guys are kind of bringing it back, whether it's from a video, whether from a book,
yeah,
whether from a seminar in Finland, bring it back and then experimenting with it yourselves and finding your own
yeah. We
impressions
had
about things.
fans, Estonian first black belt Martin Aidma, that who lives in Finland right now. So he was a fan of Ruvina Sato and Kenki Sudo and those Japanese submission wrestling, or those fighters. So everybody was doing something, looking up, the stuff they could get. Martin was the one actually did like a jumping triangle. Me first, I still remember he choked me, not out, but I tapped. I was like, "What the hell was that?" Oh, it's just a jumping triangle. I remember those moments where it's just the first time you see something. What is that? And you have to tap to it. So and then I remember the moment when one of the Estonian guys, Indrek, I think, showed us the triangle choke. Nobody knew about it. I was like, "Wow, this is a triangle choke!" And so those kind of fun experiences. And yeah, so that's kind of like a messy beginning, a little bit, but kind of you can see the lineage going, that Wing Chun and grappling at the same time, and some history. And as soon as I myself, I guess, started to get more interested of fighting, as fighting is, I started to lean more towards MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, and away from those kind of things that I did before. Because before I didn't have interest of fighting, so to speak. That I guess I sparred and we did as a competition karate times also. So, but it wasn't that, and I was still, I think, believing certain things, and I trusted authorities, what they were telling us and stuff. So I couldn't. I think later I started to think myself more and all those things. So and I'm happy. I don't bash my history, so to speak. Sometimes I'm a little bit stressed, but overall, because of the history I have, I'm right now here.
Sure.
So yeah, everything kind of led to this. That I was Wing Chun, and then I in Wing Chun I met the Sambo guy that introduced us to groundwork, and then you can go like it's a crazy luck. I randomly kind of meet somebody like this, and now I'm 43, doing traveling the world and teaching, and I'm having a good good living. So it worked out, but it is a strange beginning. But I also appreciate, because I've done all those traditional, let's say, a lot of traditional arts, so I can argue with people, debate with people, that why they're good, why they're not good. So usually people's arguments are, you haven't done it yourself, you don't know. But I can debate you why Aikido is good, why we could stay away from that or something. So I think that knowledge is very useful when you're coach. And when I grew up in an era of Royce Gracie taking over the world,
Sure.
because people had doubts.
So, at what point did SPG and or SBG come into the equation? Because this is like my co-host, and then Chris is a big fan of Matt Thornton, and he's not here because he has obligations with his family and stuff. But how did you get, I guess, formally belted up in jujitsu, and how did that relationship form?
Uh, First guy, Indrek Rayland, I think, went to UK, one of the seminars of Matt, when he visited Late Car Tanswell in Manchester, I think, and he came back with a blue belt. So, and also we joined SPG because I was in Tallinn. I think Martin Aidma was also, I think, back in the day. And Indrek, he's like a right now. He's a really smart person. So let's say he's philosophy professor or something these days. He was kind of reading. He was reading Matt's blog, philosophical blogs, and when Matt wrote stuff. And then there was a time that I know Finnish people asked me like, "What you want to do? You want to join the alliance?" It was big in Finland, Helsinki, because they knew us. We were competing there and stuff. Guys from the woods. I would say they called us a little bit like random people came, and we actually did pretty good in the competitions. It's just without any of formal coaches and stuff. And I think Indrek explained us the aliveness and all those things that Matt was talking about. And for us, the reasoning was that, in a way, it sounds bad to say it, kind of, we were against the Brazilian way. Like the SPG was offering more kind of more scientific approach. Why, how to coach, how to drill. Still aliveness one-on-one blog spot that Matt has. There's an article about drilling that literally says, the headline is about drilling. Still one of the best articles there is, and this was very long time from like my Bible that I read many times, and every year I started to understand it better. So, and he gave us the, like a formula, why to teach, how to teach, what is important, and not just 30-minute condition warm up, 3 techniques, and then your roll method. That usually, it's said that this is very traditional. So that was main reason, and I kind of trusted Indrek, and I didn't want to separate the team, and we still were a small country, so it was another city, but we were still friends. And I didn't have a guts to go my own way back then because I trusted him. And then he was so he went, I guess, in some point to have a seminar, and then he came back with blue belt, and then we were like, oh shit, we're not, actually somebody's a blue belt. He was a god back then. So, and then we started to go to seminars because I think I was Estonian first purple belt. I think Martin was Estonian first black belt. Uh, and then what else? So then I guess going to Manchester, and even some point I went to Portland to live. I think it was maybe 10 years ago already. Or I went for 3 months to Portland. I met my very good friend Peter Boghossian, actually, the atheist philosopher, and I lived in his house 3 months. We got along super super well. A very very awesome person. And I stayed in States, kind of, and I think I didn't get any belt there. I got my 2 stripes or something there. Brown belt I got in San Francisco, I think, Berkeley, and black belt I got in Portland also, 2012. So
Was there any evaluation process, like a formal testing rather,
no,
for you to get belted? It was just
we usually have Ironman.
okay.
Yeah, so the Ironman, what SPG does?
Is this where they start with the white belts and work their way
Yeah,
up
yeah,
to the
yeah.
blue, purple, brown, and black?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just a rolling session. I know from my brown belt in Berkeley, I had to roll with James Davis, very stocky guy, and I think he was already brown belt, so it was a no-gi match, and I probably rolled with him. I know I rolled with Matt before, so he was checking something out, and then we had a really long, grueling match, like a sparring match in front of the coaches with James Davis. He's not in SPG anymore, so and that was enough, and then people, I think I got my brown belt after that. I also had my Ironman in that camp, so it was a very grueling camp. And for my black belt, I usually visited like many years in a row. I visited America for 2 or 3 months at times, and then 2007, 2012, November, January. No, I think it was November or December. Sorry, and then it was Ironman for me for a black belt. I
Now
actually
was
had
this
that time rib injury, so it's in some point I had to suck it up, and then finally Matt said like, "Don't do any more knee and bellies on him." So I just like previous day I got my rib injury. Somebody did it, so I had to go like 40 people, like really hard, enough with the rib injury. So it was it was a mental challenge.
Now, these trips to the United States, were these of your own volition? Like, not your own volition, but of your own, yeah, I guess of your own volition. Like you made the decision, like I want to go there, or was Matt giving you direction to say, hey, you should, try
No,
to come these times?
I think I guess he would have said something like, but it's mostly was my escape that I escaped and I enjoyed that I went away, and I guess also in a time in that way I could ease the money pressure in my club. So I was just other people were coaching, other people were getting money, and I was staying away. I was doing other things. So and I joined. I also enjoyed the traveling definitely, but it was also I think getting away in that sense. I also lived in Sweden in many summers in a row, in a way because always the club were having a hard time in summers. So money wise, I left and I lived and gave classes in Sweden many times with my at my friend's place in Norrköping. So Daniel Backfeld. So, but it's interesting you asked that because I cannot give you a straight answer because I think I went myself because I could go there, and I know I had also replacements for that time when I went. So it
at,
wasn't
at
like
your academy, like you were
yeah, yeah,
able to have someone
yeah,
teach in your
yeah,
absence.
yeah, yeah. So and also we didn't have I never had before this new gym. I never had my own kind of 24/7 gym. We always rented times from judo guys and those kind of things. So, and I know somebody definitely replaced me, and so everything in that sense was good. But I was traveling pretty much regularly in many 4 or 5 years in a row to always Portland, and then Travis Davison moved to Montana, so I was there. Went to Steve Whittier place in East Coast, so I was a little bit traveling around. Went to Niagara, so I was in a way all over Edmonton and Canada and everything. So
That's interesting. You went to some places in the United States that most non-Americans wouldn't necessarily visit first.
yeah.
It's not the Montana's not the classic first destination
Yeah.
for.
But I guess I went to the different gyms that offered me opportunities.
Hmm.
So in other cities, maybe I didn't know people so much. So I definitely I know I've been in Berkeley also in some point, also for seminar, but just first visiting them. And so I used their SPG networking as getting myself around and sharing my ideas, like raw ideas back then what I had about things. So I'm also appreciate that opportunity definitely.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is that was very fascinating, and I have a number of questions that I want to. We'll see how
Sure.
many we get through because I have a feeling these aren't just one word answer kind of questions. But the first shouldn't be a take too long, I would think, because I think you already kind of touched on it in you describing kind of your origins, and that's this: what made you bring scientific methodology, empirical evidence, or wanting to have empirical evidence and applying scientific methodology to jujitsu and using that to challenge, preconceived notions whether it comes to coaching methodologies, which is its own kind of topic, or just what techniques work and what don't. What do you think? Uh, what do you think caused you to connect the two and say I need to apply scientific method to jujitsu?
It's but I'm gonna turn it around a bit because um, I don't think the reason for scientific evidence and empirical evidence came first. It's the way I am, and then people have said, "Oh, you're so science based," and you. Some people have said you should have definitely you have a engineering background and stuff. I was like, no, I'm self taught. I've read some books. Probably I should read more books, but I'm lazy also. I read enough books, I guess. But then people have how to say make sense of me like, oh, you're scientific and you look for evidence, and you can say for me, I don't know, it comes natural, and I don't define myself this way, but it helps me to make sense of what I do because how else are you gonna do it, and if you're alone, it's a sad story in a way that if you're alone in Estonia, And so you have nobody to turn to in that sense. All the coaches are abroad, Ireland, England, and America. What do? You have to figure stuff out on your own. And then it's easier to figure stuff out for yourself, because you can do whatever you want, like find your solution, reaction based, whatever. But it's crazy hard to teach others, because if you don't have a system or understanding or everything else, teaching your game to others and all those things, it's very, very hard if you don't have a structure. So, and recently, I think I've seen, I don't know, my mind has exploded, or then I see different things everywhere, and certain visual rules that I have, all the defensive things, are giving me like how to say, like a framework. The structure. I also would say like I'm a visual person, and those structures are giving me confidence, so to speak. That if I do this, and now win or lose. If I lose too much, let's change the structure. And I have a weird. I don't know actually what it's based, but I have a weird belief that Jiu-Jitsu is perfect. And I also have, the authority quote that Rickson Gracie said that, Jiu-Jitsu is perfect. It's people that makes mistakes. But I take it literally, because there is perfection. Let's say if you see certain moves, let's say even like a simple one, triangle choke, it is perfect. The way their body goes around my body, and it just everything clicks. It's a perfect choke. You understand? So like physically, we're meant to fit with each other, and I'm looking for that perfection in that sense everywhere. Because jiu-jitsu is so wide, I cannot, I know that in passing and everything, in leg drag situations and all those things, I'm also looking for perfection. Like, I know that people are moving and then it creates a chaos, but I think ideally we can move each other always perfectly clicked, like always attached to each other perfectly. And that's what I have when I talk about escaping and everything, like a hawking or running man. It's just the way it works. I see perfection in it. That the way it's hard to put it in words. And then I know the human factor, the sport factor kicks in, that makes it more messy. But as a technique wise, I'm really drawn to the perfection, and I'm a firm believer that it's there. And many people I know, that's why a lot of people haven't done what I do, all the hawkings and everything, because they don't believe it exists, and they are settling for the lesser version of this, like a turtle, because they don't fix turtle. For me, it was like, this just doesn't make any sense, and Tellus, why nobody can challenge Tellus as a back taking, like a competition. And then people doing elbows on a mat and all other shit. They don't go like, oh, maybe there's a better version, you know. Because many people, I just sometimes drives me nuts actually, because we see that turtle doesn't work the way it's taught. Because if you put your elbows on a mat, you expose yourself to so much shit that no wonder that people don't like turtle, because hooks, guillotines, darces, marces, barces, larces, everything is there. But then why we're doing this? But the belief is, I have a belief that there's something better. And now I know there is, because there's a head on a mat turtle, elbows out, and all those things. And everything is better. And I'm happy I had that blind belief to go after things. And what I found first, helped me to realize it's everywhere. So now we have a turtle, upright turtle, pandas, hawkings, baby bridges, running mans. And now we're like, oh shit, there's so many of those things. And my point is kind of to posturize jiu-jitsu for myself, because that is if I say only way, maybe I'm over exaggerating a bit, but let's say right now, it is the only way it makes sense to me. Because then I can do test, observe, lose, change the structure, do another test. But if it's just random things, it's super hard for me to learn, and I'm getting very frustrated when I don't know what to do or why I'm losing. And it drives me nuts. And so to make sense of it, I've built those systems for me mostly, and always improving them. And now, 2020, we have very weirdly effective defensive system that people have to accept it's there. So I'm not done yet. That also maybe we change something in the future. So I don't know. It was a long-winded answer, but maybe you got something out of it.
No, and it sounds like it all stemmed from, and this is something I've heard in your previous conversations with on other podcasts, and also listening to the seminars you give, that the absence of having an authority figure to appeal to, which in a lot of situations, what would a guy like me do? I'd go ask my coach, or I
Yeah,
could appeal to a higher belt, and they would just tell me, yeah, you do this. And there's really oftentimes there's a little opportunity to ask why, because if you ask why, they'll be like, well, my coach told me that. And you end up going up this
yeah.
hierarchy of like, my coach told me to do, and everyone just takes it at face value and doesn't question it. And then you finally go back long enough, and maybe there's some odd sort of reason. I think Sonny was talking about this in your conversation on the Sonny Brown breakdown, where it's sort
Yeah.
of like, why do we do this? And it's some esoteric reason, but then it got passed down, and now people think it's gospel. So I
But
uh,
yeah,
I think it makes sense exactly why you evolved the characteristics of, how am I going to get better? Well, the only way I think I can get better, that I know is, I think, valid, is to be scientific in my approach and to test things out. And if they don't work, then I need to adjust. So it seems
because
like a
I'm all,
result of your environment.
yeah, I guess it helps. I'm Estonian. I think we are also very questioning people. We're not religious. Like Estonia is one of the most atheistic countries in the world. So just always doubting stuff. And I guess also those Rich and Feynman videos and stuff they gave me, because I'm not university educated, so to speak. That I'm not an engineer, and but those kind of rules that Feynman says, look the reality, do experiment. If the experiment is not correlated with the reality, experiment is wrong. So I got certain like a base rules to understand, to make sense of it, and I've gathered certain rules for me. And the crazy one that I can't answer is like why I believe blindly, because let's say with that Eric Lindenstad guy that helped me to figure out the turtle, he was the closest we had to tell us, so to speak. And I know many people have rolled with him, and uh, they weren't inspired to figure him out because they didn't see something. I was right away like, "Wow, what the hell?" Why you have so hard time? Why I have so hard time uh, taking her back? And I was very intrigued, and it literally took us 2.5 years, not like everyday thinking, but just to figure him out. But I don't know why I right away saw, because I know some people also took his back, and I know they were like, "Oh yeah, nothing," there's nothing, so to speak. But I saw something, and that's because of that guy. We figured out what Tellus does. It helped us to figure out. So certain things, I would usually like to call it. I get punched in the face by certain things, and it really go like, "Whoa, what the hell was that?" And it starts to bug me. And I even if people lose, let's say, what happens to people. One case maybe you can relate to is you saw the Robbie Lawler and Colby Covington match.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first round I'm usually talking about, the first round when Colby couldn't hit Robbie hard, and Robbie was doing like pandas, and he was sitting next to a wall, kind of easily protecting himself from Colby, and many people were like, oh, many people didn't see what I saw. Even commentators were like, oh, he's in danger. And I pointed it out in a Facebook to people that, guys, did you see what he was doing? Because if Colby could hit him in the face hard, he would do that, but he couldn't. And people were like, what happened? What round are you talking about? I was like, go watch the first round. And but then many people, even seeing that again, said, oh, but he lost. I was like, yeah, but he survived. And so those kind of, and some people said, oh, this was intentional actually behavior, that he was choosing to do that as a defensive strategy. And like a majority of people didn't see it. But so I see something. Of course, I do what I do, and then Robbie could do it in a highest level of our sport. But those kind of things I've seen randomly in my jiu-jitsu career that people neglect, and I get stuck to. I was like, oh, it's something there we have to study, and I go to the rabbit hole, and then mostly it's a very lonesome road because nobody believes what I believe, and then I end up figuring stuff out, and then they're, oh yeah, we thought also, but blah blah blah. So my history is full of those things that we know why the stuff I'm usually pointing out is the beginning of the grilled chicken open guard, the name I use is Braulio Estima and Galvao match, super match, 2011, I think, or 13 maybe. Braulio Estima kept Andre Galvao away with that position, with the grilled chicken structure, the legs and stuff. And I was like, Galvao compared to me knows everything about jiu-jitsu. And he couldn't approach that guard, in that sense, that challenge Braulio. I was like, what the hell is that structure? Why is nobody talking about it? And so I got stuck in there, and that's why we have open guard. And I have really, compared to what I hear people have, and I have easier time explaining all that complexity with that structure. So, and also people said, oh, but Braulio lost the match. Who the fuck cares? Didn't you see what he did? How easy it was to keep Galvao away, physical, very knowledgeable grappler. And so I see certain things, and then it was like, yeah, it took us a couple of years to make sense of it, because we started to play it with this, and then all the problems came out and we fixed it. But my history, like last 12 years or something, is full of those things that kind of led me to those moments. And many people didn't see what I saw, and I have no clue why I got hit in the face and why I went after those things. And so yeah, it's a mystery for me also.
So one of the bigger topics I want to touch on here, if you thought we didn't touch on any big topics yet, this is the one that I was very curious to ask you, and I had to write it down because there's some layers to it, but you'll immediately get the context, because the question is simple. So, in your opinion, Preet, how should brand new people be taught jiu-jitsu?
Oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. How does one reduce the initial complexity for them? What are the core techniques and concepts you would first share with new students, and why?
I think I would answer that question fully on my deathbed. So, but that what you asked is something that I'm after. This is this is my the road I'm on at the moment to answer that question. I can answer that question partially already right now, I guess, but I'm definitely not done because I'm trying to figure it out. So I appreciate also when people joining my journey and already interested, because the evidence towards what I do is enormous. That it works. But so what let's say just overall, I if I say I hate traditions, you have to take it in a right way. I think traditions are very dangerous, and they help us to get stuck in time. So, and all the rituals we do, they have to have a meaning, and I don't mind rituals if they serve a purpose. So, because let's say this is a very broad topic, but I think it helps to beginners also. Overall, stop calling people professors and all those, whatever. We are not different than anybody else, and I have, engineers and professors in my class. I don't call them engineers and professors. So stop like idolizing jiu-jitsu as a life coaching, like a platform. So like people come in, they're there to learn jiu-jitsu. I guess it helps. As a also like an environment, I think I have to say this. Yeah, it's always on my mind, the professor thing. But overall, also we should stop the demonizing, the showing the back thing. Because all my life I've heard that basically before the black belt, or that turtle is a transitional position and don't stay there and everything. But this argument is so flawed that everything is transitional position. As a mount bottom, also you don't want people to mount you and punch you in the face. You escape during transitions. So the argument it's like broken. But just as for beginners, how do you start? Is like let's say the way I teach beginners at the moment, not a perfect way, but the way we start in our club is we don't let them roll 3 months, because we have to weed out the idiots that are there to hurt and are there the health hazards and are not meant to be there. It's very, I use my not first language to express that, but we have had injuries when we started to like roll people, allow people to roll on the first day. There's always some physical guy that takes it all seriously and then hurts everybody else. Hurts those nice people that come to the class, and there's some physical guys. So mainly our beginners course is, I think, half or a little bit over the half is about submissions. So we start actually teaching people those UFC submissions that they understand, because they don't understand half guard passing. There's no context for that. But we teach them how to be safe by showing them submissions that they can expect. That means darces, arm bars, guillotines, knee bar, ankle lock, everything. And I think we have a 3 month like beginner's course. I think half or a little bit over the half are submissions, because they do
Now, just
isolation.
one sorry, one
Yeah,
thing, just to interrupt. So you said beginner course, just a couple clarification, then you can continue. The beginner course is uh that's exclusively for the new students. So they
yeah,
are in their own sandbox.
yeah. The terrible thing to do for beginners is to accept them to main group right away.
Sure.
That's one of the worst things you can do.
Okay, and then in terms of is it well, this is later because we're trying now, and I'm thinking curriculum and how much time do you spend
Yeah,
on a topic.
yeah,
So I'll
yeah.
get back to it. So you're teaching. You say it's about 6 months for the new students. They're with them.
No,
Do
three
you have them
months.
warm up with the other class, or is it their own
No,
class?
it's 3 months actually, not 6 months. So
Oh, sorry,
beginners
3 months.
course is 3 months. They have like maybe 8 to 10 minute warm up,
Okay,
just the movement patterns and stuff. It's also maybe warm up is connected to the class. I think they're doing. I don't teach beginners, but they do in every class a different section of the warm up that is necessary in a more higher groups. So if let's say if you have a Kimura class, we concentrate more on Kimura warm ups, like a shoulder stuff and shoulder griddle and
sure.
everything, because we have to explain them how to do everything. So it takes time. So we don't do a full warm up.
Okay,
And the class is 1 hour, but they do isolation training, progressive resistance, and everything else. So they get a sense of finishing things. And I teach, I guess we teach backwards. So you teach armbar finishing, and then you move closer to the mount, and then you use backwards methodology, not forward. That's the very, very big difference. That's I should say like more clubs should do it in the world, and it's not even debatable. I think. And so I teach them submissions, and then after 3 months, we had like 4 stages. We had a beginners, base, main, and advanced. But now after Corona, we have a beginners fundamental group and then advanced. But after 3 months, they start to roll, and now they know the main submissions, how to be safe, how to tap, and then they start to build context. So your question is hard to answer because it's like it's a group class. If I would teach somebody individually, probably there's a little bit of a different order and stuff, um, because I would maybe start from even defensive stuff and build the game bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. But with a group class, we do the way I explained, and then they start to have they have a in fundamentals maybe year curriculum something, and we try to go over all the positions and all the positions like back escapes and stuff, but they're based on certain structures. So it is actually a really hard question to answer, because if it sounds really logical that it should have a straight answer. But what comes to escapes example, that we then when we're teaching escapes, I will use my knowledge about what I know about escapes, and then go to baby bridge escape, go to hawking escape, and if you get stuck, giving up underhooks and crossface, and then how do you escape then? But the point is to not make them stuck in a side control. It's very bad when they know only escape they know is from underhook and crossface position. I think that's terrible for beginners. And I know people are answering, oh, but they end up there. But we can actually train them that they will not end up there against their own kind, because we have underhook drills and all those things we can play. And actually, getting underhooks and seatbelts are harder. So just people don't know yet, so to speak. And
well, and I agree with you because you've made the point in some of your seminars that we being, let's say, the jiu-jitsu community in general, have a bad habit of inadvertently, implicitly teaching bad habits to new students.
yeah,
Because if you're teaching it, let's say an offensive drill, let's say half guard passing, or side control, you immediately put the person on bottom in the worst possible position and don't tell them that this is the worst possible position.
Yeah.
So they just start to think implicitly, like, if I'm on bottom, both my shoulders are on the mat. It's like, well, no, actually, that's the last thing you want. Like, they've done all this hard work to put you in this position, and now they're going to try to attempt to pass, let's say, or now they're going to attempt to improve their position, where in fact
So yeah,
they should never be allowed to get
yeah,
to
it
that
should be a
position.
it should be a fight that in other cases also, like I usually in my YouTube I've made those examples that in mount we're better. In mount we always teach people to have the frame on a hip. Example, is it the right or wrong thing to do, whatever. But in mount bottom we don't to teach mount bottom. We don't start the top guy having a crossface underhook and already squashing us. So why we're letting this happen in the side control, so to speak, that in mount, and also when we do, let's say, in a guard top, we don't teach people like, oh, you're in right now already in arm drag situation and now open the legs. It's too deep already. We teach beginners to stay away from everything, to avoid all the whatever the arm position you use in a close guard, to avoid everything and to get the guard open. So in guard, we act like it's like a early is the best way. But then in side control bottom, we put them in underhook crossfit situation. And then we say like, oh, but they end up there. Because they end up there because we teach that. They would end up also in a guard, in arm drag position when we teach only opening legs from the arm drag position. So sometimes I get so annoyed by people there. They're justifying certain traditions and they don't have a better answer than they're just repeating what somebody else said. And so that's why I'm also like kind of sometimes aggressive by that, but because I've tired a little bit about this mindset of people that, oh, we do how we're told. And so it's not black and white, but that's why it is hard paradigm shift what I do, because I still meet those things, that people doing frames and people doing this and that, and they're not exposing their back, and we have evidence. We have goddamn Eduardo Telles. So I know people say it's oh, it's like a one guy only, but if one guy spars with dozens of good guys, Keenan, Saulo Ribeiro, and whatever, and they cannot take his back. So not only one guy can take his back, but dozens of people. So why we're neglecting that evidence and saying it's just the one guy, And then people say, oh, he's losing fights, he's not winning fights. Did you saw he defended a good back takes from Keenan? Why would you go, oh, he lost? Who cares? And so I find, we're back to some other rant, but so I having a hard time actually, answering your question, because I'm trying with my stuff. I'm trying to answer that better, because clearly I would teach beginners my way of doing side control bottom, my way of doing the upright turtles and pandas. We have goddamn 4-stripe white belts that we have very hard time like dominating in a gym as purples and black belts. Like this is like very, very strange that finally, yes, they lose finally, but god damn, we have to work on them, like get those underhooks, get them flat, get those seat belts. It's a fight. And if I've done jiu-jitsu like 15 to 20 years, it shouldn't be I have a hard time with white belts. But people like
Well, if the
also my
level of instruction has gone up over the
yeah.
time,
So
then
and
you can expect
defensively
more
they're
progression.
smart. Defensively they're smart. Of course they lose, but then it's easy to correct them also. So definitely I can answer your question better what comes to defensive side of jiu-jitsu. How to back escape, and how to play side control or turtle. And the hard part is to build it in a curriculum, in that sense that I don't have in a beginner's course or in some mid group. I don't have time to spend 2 months on a turtle. But I don't think it has to be that way. That I can really teach like a good turtle in 2 classes, like really make them super annoying and just give them a broad ideas, elbows and everything, head and pummeling and hooks out and stuff. I can do it in 2 classes. Give me like 1 hour each class, and I can make them good for beginners. And then after that, it's easy to guide them. What they did wrong, why I got seatbelt, pummel the elbows out. I can guide them. I can add to it later. But as a defensive structure, it's easy to get. What's hard about is techniques. Like how do you escape from let's say from hawking? What is the stiff arm? What is the underhook? So there is kind of lies the problem, because they take time, because you need context, because it comes with counters. So So I still also struggle, but I can already feel that I can answer that basic problem better. And I can, what I see also in my case, and I can make beginners enjoy more the starting years of jiu-jitsu because they don't get smashed. They don't get like left and right submitted without them knowing why it happened. I get messages from like beginners who have done it like 3 to 4 months, and they're saying like blue belts can't catch me. It's not an ego thing also because I'm just not giving them underhooks. I'm just relentlessly. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I would escape, but I'm not giving them underhooks. And their blue belts, their buddies, they have a super hard time catching them. They're gonna lose eventually. But they're like, oh, I can survive. I can play this game. So I get like not every day, but I get those messages. So I give you the open-ended answer because I'm trying to answer the question and I'm partly answering the question with my things. The harder part in defensive matter, harder part is to build it in a structure because the bad thing is most people do not attend most classes. They're
That
skipping
actually,
classes.
though, I
Yeah,
actually have I added like my not my follow up, but the next part of this involves curriculum to a degree. I did have one quick question though
go on.
regarding that 3 month intro for brand new students. I was surprised how heavy it was into submissions. I mean, I definitely could envision triangle, rear naked strangle, kimuras, arm bars, but to go to even doing Darises and stuff is interesting. Now, you said 50% of your time is spent on submissions,
Yes.
and I can see the appeal because, like you said, they see it in the UFC. It's fun, it's engaging. You want to
Yeah.
engage people. Are you teaching any sort of positional hierarchy, like this is close guard, this is half guard, this is side control, this is mount, this is back mount, or you're not? Like, what is the? I guess my question is, what are you teaching a positional hierarchy, and also what is the other 50% dedicated to? I would imagine movements is part of that to some
Uh,
degree.
so yeah, submission is like a why I choose submission is the safeness issue, but it's the context they understand. They have no reference why half guard passing. What the fuck is a half guard? Why they're
Hmm.
squeezing your leg? What is the
Hmm.
pluses and minuses? So, but the trick is I give you them the end of the spear, and then we start to build the context. You understand?
Hmm.
And so if your armbar works, then you go like let them close the arm, you know, armbar them. Then go to like S mount or side mount, whatever they call it, in mount. Then fall back from there.
Sure.
Then get them to the side. So you're building a context all the time if they're better. First, other way, if you start from that S mount thing to cut to the armbar, it's very big road. So without having a good time and a lot of time, it's hard. And also we do it this way that every class is independent from each other, so people can jump into that cycle in every class. It's not like we're going to take people in the 1st September and they're going to leave in end of the November. So it's every class is independent. So for beginners, it's the most convenient. They can join any class they want and start their 3 month cycle from there.
Do
So
you ever spend 2 consecutive days on the same
no,
topic?
no.
So doesn't this conflict with your feeling that I've heard you see the argument, like, I'm a black belt. I challenge anyone to learn 15 techniques in the
Yes.
classic in the context of a classic class, right? The classic class, the guy, you do your 20-minute warm up, then you do your three
Yes.
different techniques, then you roll, and then tomorrow you do something else, and now you've learned a bunch of techniques in a short period of time, and none are really going to be assimilated to your game. So how do you reconcile that, which I agree with what you just said here?
But when I talk about this technique stuff, I always said in a beginning it's different. You're learning context. After the beginner's course is a little bit different, and I'm still I know what I said, and I'm still trying to find the balance point how to teach less myself and how to make. I will also answer the question differently. I think we jumped off here. I'm gonna I'm gonna talk. Let's talk about when people are skipping classes. Let's say in some other point, and why the way I teach could be a better answer to the overall answer, like how to teach. So in beginners, it depends all about objective. What is the objective of 3 months? Objective is to make them have fun. They learn something. They learn to be a good partner. They learn to win and lose because somebody is a loser, somebody is a winner because the sparring is off. Somebody is ending up in armbar, and I'm gonna finish. I learn to tap. Yeah, if you let them spar, they don't tap. if you let them do like a loser and winning drills, there's no issues there. People don't get injured mostly. And then the preparedness is just to make them also follow rules and weed out the people that are not supposed to be there, and also maybe also influence people that have different ideas of training, make them in a way that they can follow rules and they become better training partners. So that is the objective of this. So later, if they come to the other group, they're ready to tap, and now they're starting to learn jiu-jitsu and context and sparring and everything else. So, and it's still, I'm still struggling with that myself, because it is like a trick question when I say that, that every class two techniques. So what we trying to do is the way the class is structured later, it's very, very drilling heavy. So usually my answer is that if I teach something that, 10 minutes warm up, let's say 20 minutes technique section, half an hour training, drilling, sorry, and then half an hour on sparring with a specific mindset of trying to pull off those techniques we did in a class. So the retention could be better. And then we have also like maybe sometimes we do 2-3 weeks techniques, and then we have a 1 week when we just drill the stuff we just did. Usually, that's after 3 weeks, we usually do a 1 week just drilling, not learning anything new, just drilling the old stuff. Sometimes even after 2 weeks, we have a drilling week. Just ease the mind, don't learn stuff, just get over what we did, repeat it again, in different situation, and then we go on. So we let them kind of like diffuse a little bit, because it gets, it will get too much. So that's the struggle I have also. And I'm trying to solve the problem with a different mentality of coaching, with a lot of drilling, with a feedback, a lot of resistance drilling, less techniques in a class. Sometimes I just teach maybe 1 or 2 things, even little things, and then we just drill. So the retention could be better, because sometimes I'm struggling with that technique wise, because if you will go to leg lock, they need to know a lot of things. So then it's more about techniques, but then we have to drill it. We have to go back. We have to reset the mindset. Let's say we did 2 months leg locks, then we do 1 month or 2 months something else, and then we go back to leg locks. So we have a bigger reset cycles. So we go back to that, because 4 months doing leg locks, these people are dead. Their legs are broken already, and there's like some other overtraining injuries start to happen. So I'm trying to still wiggle the system, so to speak, and answer it better, because I think. I don't think we can scale it to like we only do armbar and then it's one technique forever. I think there is certain capacity of techniques that we have to know, and then we can manage around that, because after certain level, I don't think I can actually coach you, or let's say teach you anything, because usually I say after purple belt you're free, and you have to take on your own road, and I can be guide to you more. That there's no black belt techniques. But let's say I'll go back to the classes like this way, that if I would do a turtle class, and if I would do like turtle techniques, I guess I would have to show some versions, what are fundamental techniques from that turtle, and what are the more exception ones. But then if you miss a class, then those techniques are not necessary actually to do jiu-jitsu. And because if we start with a basic turtle, then maybe the first 5 minutes of the class would be we're just doing the basic turtle, getting everybody on their mind. So if you're a white belt and there's a black belt in a class, then everybody does the same turtle. Yeah. And then that's the main thing, that, knees are wide and elbows and head and everything. We just fix the mistakes, and then we add certain technique to that. So if you miss that, it's not bad, because next time we do the same thing, 5-minute turtle, and then we add another technique. And the main thing, what you have to get from that class is that turtle actually. And then
Everything
randomly
else
you
is
join.
auxiliary.
Yeah.
Auxiliary, and also probably to keep things fresh for the students,
Yes.
to make
And
them
then
game.
if you miss the technique, I don't mind, because I know you have that turtle. You can roll, be safe, and just your level. If you're, I don't know, if you're a black belt, you can play like a very open turtle and do your tricks. Add something to the technique. I could care less, because you have a context to break it also. So in that sense, kind of shortly said, white belts and black belts can train together in the same class, because when there's drilling time, you can pull off everything you want, and then if it's white belts time to drill, maybe they drill the one technique they did in the class, But as a black belt, you can do like 10 different ones. Who cares? And you're kind of on your own, but you have to know the basic structure. So I'm not limiting that if you pull something else off, oh, you have to stick to the class. You know what you're doing. Even purple or brown, who cares? So then the main thing is I'm trying to get to the head is that turtle structure, and everything else is because what I'm a 20 years jiu-jitsu. My game from turtle basically is from turtle. I will let's say I stand up, I turn around, pull guard, or I turtle roll you. Those are the techniques I use, and I can do it with a pretty high level. So my argument is also that black beltness is not defined by how much techniques you know. If my turtle is surviving against decent black belts, I will not give up my black back, in that sense, if I don't want to, or it still happens, but you know what I mean. And then if I can survive 50% of times other my level, my size black belt attacks, and I can pull off one technique, I'm a black belt. It doesn't matter that I can do 10 different techniques, from turtle. So that's the trick. I'm also, wrestling with myself that how much you should teach, because clearly I know those techniques, but I'm choosing not to do all of them. And so the question is, how much do I have to show the people? And my theory is that I have to show them enough that I can, if I'm turtle, somebody is at my right side, I can run them over to my right. I can roll them over to my left. I guess I can have some other option, stand up and inverts. I can give them basic stuff. And then I'm not going to go like, let's do 20 other techniques from turtle. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going that crazy. But I'm saying that from certain point, you have to take, responsibility of your own, route, so to speak. That I'm going to teach you certain fundamentals like kimuras and armbars, but I'm not going to go crazy like the rabbit hole teaching you every kind of other submission exception there is, because that's a rabbit hole. You just end up teaching like all crazy sweeps. So, and also if you see like, Gron Gracie, he doesn't do anything, but he's a very entertaining fighter. He's just grabbed the collar and just keeps very simple. If you see Marcelo, you don't see like him using spider guard. So that means even like maybe spider guard is not even so fundamental to jiu-jitsu.
Look at Hodger. I always look at Hodger. Hodger's our fundamental curriculum. If you look at all his matches, he's doing fundamental curriculum.
Yeah. So it's a balance of what can you pull off, and I think if you have that defensive structure, defensive ideas, and then you can get by with less. And I also know why people like those techniques, because it's learning something new always. But my argument is, if I would teach you Kimura, and if I make a bottom guy defensively a Superman, you will have forever interesting time finishing that Kimura. But if defensive knowledge is bad, then your Kimura finishing rate is super high, and you get bored, and you're not willing to do this. But then the trick is, if you watch competition, we see all that goddamn old armbar, that goddamn Kimura all over again, everywhere. We don't see those exceptions we teach in a class. So the question is, how do we make, it's a lifelong journey, I think. How do we make that basic thing, fundamental thing, interesting to learn forever? And then how do we let people explore and discover those exceptions? But I don't believe that's my job. I believe that I have to create environment where I say, okay, do we have a Kimura grip? And I guess, 2 out of 3 out of 10 try to finish Kimura, but also do everything else you find in YouTube. But I put them in that position to isolate sparring. Understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then everybody can develop their own thing, because they're, leg dexterity and all those things. Because also, if people defend, sometimes Kimuras are not there. So this is the way I would like to teach, like Kimura, and then go apeshit, figure it out, and do whatever you want, basically. And I hope some Kimuras are also there. So it's more about control if I'm talking about attack. And then if I'm talking about escape, it's like I take my hawking, and then it's like I think you have to know the options like jab, cross, hook, body shot, and overhand in that sense. But then it's just figure it out, and the bottom person gives you low resistance so you can have success, and then if you have enough success, they make it harder. And this is the way you learn, understand the chaos, because there's no straight way out, so to speak. Like, give me the straight answer out of side control. If you watch how high level people escape, it's never the techniques you kind of learned in a class, in a way. You understand what I mean? It just happens by their experience. It's cumulative experience, combining things, and somehow they escape. You know what I mean? It's never gonna be
Yeah,
that.
and I mean, in the sense that you're like, let's take Mount for example. If I'm on Mount Bottom, or if you're watching a high level match, the person on bottom doesn't get out by doing a single escape, regardless of
Yes.
whichever one you taught. They've blended them together and created enough chaos, created enough of a transition that they're now able to essentially have a window to get out. But it was never just they did an elbow escape perfectly and they get out. No, the guy can counter that. They have to string together
Yeah.
escapes and the
So I would.
hope that they can create a
Yeah.
window to get out.
Yeah. And the question is then, how do we teach that? Actually, I would start to, let's say, to teach mount escapes like this, that I would start from quarter mount. You understand? I
Mhm.
teach backwards. I would start like one ankle is between the legs. So then I would teach them, you can push the knee and get to half guard. You can go to deep half guard under the leg. And I guess if you get to half guard, you can go to full guard. But I would just let them, I would give them even like barely go underhook, deep half guard, or push the knee between half guard. That's your escapes. And then I would go like, okay, next step would be, if you were successful with that, then I would start from mount and your ankle not being between the legs. And then you have to get the ankle between the legs. There's also techniques to that.
Sure.
And from that position, you can ankle between the legs, or you can go even double underhooks from the mount bottom, or the frames I use, whatever it is. So I would teach backwards in that sense, and I would let them just play, because just showing them one thing, it doesn't prepare them for the reality. Because if they spar later, they're done if they're dependent on one option.
Well, and the other thing that you're doing uh, that I think you're fully aware of, but you're touching on it implicitly right now, is that you're giving your students as often as you can an objective, even though they might not necessarily possess all the techniques to achieve that objective. They at least have a goal in mind so that they can invent whatever they can invent to get to that position. So instead of just telling them, this is the elbow escape to get out of mount. No, you're telling them get the leg, but get to quarter mount. So they know what that looks like. They know what the end result
Yeah,
should be. Now it's a question of you don't even have to teach them a technique. They'll try to come up with something to do that. And
yeah.
half the time, a smart student will probably do something kind of similar to what you're going to teach.
And I think it's like, I have a very good example that I'm guilty of this also sometimes. That if you start to explain, I'm using the basketball. If you start to explain how, let's say, basketball throw, yeah, you elbow and then finally you wrist, goes. If you start to go like 35 degrees, when every joint moves, and you have like a A4 page of just like movements, and you go like, oh shit, this is so complicated. But then you tell people like, take a cookie from the jar, take a cookie from the high shelf, and they will do that movement by themselves. You understand?
Hmm.
So if I think if we're getting too many times, I think we're starting to explain people that things that they don't need to be explained. And I think teaching backwards is a very powerful method, because if I give you the ankle already in and say push the knee in, they will find a way. And then after they did it themselves, then I can correct them because they have context. Then I would say, don't push with two arms, don't do this, add more this. But I'm guiding them to the better answer. If I start to explain how the elbow knee escape like looks and works, they're like, you know.
Yeah, and I
So
think that's also I think what you're talking about is one of the characteristics of jujitsu versus, let's say, basketball or even wrestling or a lot of other sports. The set of techniques in jujitsu dwarfs that of basketball. In basketball, shooting is, one would argue probably one of the most important techniques, but it's just one technique and it's had years and years of coaches teaching it. And as a result, there are a lot of these expressions, like you said, get the cookie out of the high jar.
Yeah.
Or in a, I've seen many basketball coaches here in the States talk about making sure you wave. It's all about the follow
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
And wrestling coaches all seem to have the habit of having expressions,
Yes.
3 points in a line or whatever it may be, that they rhyme, they stick in the student's head, and it works because, I mean, if you could do it for jujitsu, but that means you'd have these expressions for hundreds of techniques in a way, for in a lot of people's minds. Now we could argue, how do what's the ideal subset of techniques that a person in jujitsu needs to know to have just basic fundamentals and everything else is extraneous, but still it, there's still way more techniques just looking at the fact that the main positions, let's say there are five main positions, right? You could count knee on stomach as another one, but close guard, half guard, side mount, mount, back mount, that's five positions. That in and of itself, there's so much complexity there that I think it's a little harder. And I also think the sport is young, and the fact that there's not
Yes.
that age of teaching. Now, speaking of those positions, I've seen actually Christian talk about this at Globetrotter camps, where he has a class where he just says one person is just passing, the other one is just playing guard, and it's essentially a wrestling class. And he talked about people almost inventing jujitsu
Hmm.
that he would eventually teach, but they don't get taught the pass; they just start doing it because they have a clear objective. With beginners, still on the topic of beginners, do you think it's possible and worthwhile to teach them kind of what I mentioned earlier, the hierarchy of positions? Say, this is close guard, this is half guard, this is side mount, this is back mount. And in general, this position, if you're attacking, for example, is superior to this position. So if you're in close guard, try to get to half guard. If you're in half guard, try to get to side control. And I know it's super mechanical, and I know there are tons of exceptions in terms of how you can go from one position and skip to go to another. But do you think that's something that has merit to teach new students, so that even though they don't know what a half guard pass is, they don't know what any sweeps are from close guard, they at least know, hey, if I can get to this other position, I'm winning. I've done better.
I can agree with that. I guess when we teach people, we're gonna say that why mount is good.
Hmm.
Why back mount is good. I don't think it's always that progression in that sense, guard, half guard, whatever. But clearly, passing the legs, why it's good, because you get access to certain things. So in that sense, I think in a class we're trying to give them as simple context as it is, because otherwise it's an honest question: why would you have to pass the guard? But the honest answer is also you don't have to pass the guard, because the answer is you have to win eventually. So then, if the answer is you have to pass the guard, then the leg locks are out, because you clearly the whole point is the winning. So, I don't like to actually say it's like you have to pass the guard. I guess your idea is to go to the certain position that allow you to win more, win faster, win better, win more often. So, and you have a very shortcut as a legs, and you have a long road as upper body. So I think I think we're trying to introduce people to both. That I don't like that guard passing is like the number one thing, because eventually if you're it depends on objective. If you're standing at their guard, just run away. Why would you have to go there? Or why leg locks are bad? So, but I understand your idea that in that sense there is a position or hierarchy: get to the mount, get to the back, but also there's a shortcut of legs that they have to know it's not bad. And if they see something in internet, some famous people are saying, oh, leg locks are cheating, they have to know that they're wrong, and they have to know that those people, they don't know what they're saying. And soon that we have to be better, and we have to tell people that it's also okay, because I understand why position or hierarchy is there, but it's not that rigid. And also fighting shows that it's not that rigid. So it's like a little bit rant again, but I would introduce them to both shortcut and a long way.
So I would argue that you run the risk with leg locks. No, let's more be general. I would argue that you run the risk when teaching shortcuts that you're going to inadvertently give students bad habits early on,
No.
because most people will go the path of least resistance. And if you teach them a shortcut, they'll do the shortcut, and you might have a situation using leg locks now where
Yeah.
they'll end up falling back for leg locks, have early success, which great, they're winning, but I don't think that success would necessarily if they develop the habit of doing that, they're going to not develop the skill of passing the guard, which becomes more important as level goes up, because people's leg lock defense goes up.
So my answer would be, I think you answered it already, but uh, if you like, it's better to sometimes it's better to teach people why things are necessary instead of just refusing them to do certain things, because I don't think we can ruin beginners that fast, because they have to learn the lesson. And I need the gym full of people that can go to legs and they can pass. And passing is, in a way, if you have a leg lock threat, passing becomes a little bit easier because people stop pushing with the legs so much. So to get access to certain passing and the people will retract their legs, you need leg locks in that sense.
To keep
And
them honest, I agree.
yeah, yeah. And so open guard player actually understands why they can't do it. And I don't, and I think it's my responsibility and coaches to explain what it is. And I definitely, after that, I have people that maybe jump on leg locks, and but then if the top guy gets stopped, so they learn the lesson also. So I find the lesson is very valuable in an early stage, to get through this teenager age of jiu-jitsu, that they get really not burned, but they get like, oh, that's why it's bad to jump on legs. Not like if you're a purple belt and brown belt, and then it's taught, that leg locks are. But I think if you introduce the reality to people, because the point is, first, let's say if I would teach the beginners course from the objective of street fighting, then I would say probably pass the guard, and I wouldn't go like, okay, jump to the legs, just put your back. But if I'm teaching jiu-jitsu from the perspective of the freedom and everything is allowed and it's jiu-jitsu, then falling on your back after leg locks and ending up in a bottom is not that bad. But then later we can go like after, if you change objective, MMA, street, and jiu-jitsu match, end of the round, why not? So then we can drill them differently also, and not allow them to go to the legs, because you have to actually force them to pass. Because let's say in this round you cannot jump on the legs, so I can play with both, and they should understand, because all the about the drilling and everything we talked about, the block spot stuff. I need people to understand why, and I need people to understand that they are responsible of their decisions. And if I hide certain decision making process from them, they will not be informed the best, and they will still sometimes, if they're denied jumping to the legs because it's not good and in fighting you shouldn't, if they haven't have experience of doing those things and learning from them, they will do it in a weird way in some future event and still try to pull it off. But I really want to teach them, give them the experience package, why things are good, why things are bad, and I'm making them responsible. Understand? So I don't want that responsibility. I want to make them accountable for their decision. And yes, we can train them and drill them if the MMA fight comes and you jump on the legs less and everything. But I want them to be smart on their own, because let's say I understand the context. Jumping to the legs would be bad, but in sometimes it's actually justified. And if you pull it off, it's you. So I don't like that black and white kind of things. And also, to learn open guard, you need leg locks. So why not get exposed to that very early? So, and we can overrun those habits later with drillings and stuff. Sometimes it's allowed, sometimes it's not. So I would still think that that freedom of exposure to everything is better than denial.
So it sounds like then, if I understand things correctly, you would not be adverse, you would not be against teaching as one of those submissions in a basics class to those first 3-month students. You teach them a straight ankle lock. This is a straight ankle lock.
Yes.
But when they are 4 or 5 months into being a white belt, they're now training in fundamentals class. It might be rare if you let people live in a white belt class that are rolling to give them the ability to do that. So one of the rules would be you cannot do foot locks right now. Like that you might do to protect maybe people trying that in at that level, and maybe let's just say at blue belt, then they can. I'm just using that arbitrarily. But what I'm saying is you can there's what you can teach is one set of techniques. What you allow live, knowing the emotion of students, and sometimes they get that urge to win. And even though, like, I don't doubt that you're doing everything in your ability to make mature, safe training partners. You know, the minute those people walk in the door, right? And knowing thresholds, knowing about applying pressure, so that people have a chance to tap and protect themselves, and we want to train every day. But you also know, I would imagine from experience, that there are people that will not, like you say, you weed them out. There's still going to be some people, a good intentioned student, that get them that, oh my God, the first time I got an arm bar on this person, and they're going to get a little excited and stuff can happen. So are you using rules to create to basically limit the techniques that are allowed to create a safer environment and less opportunity for not
Of course.
catastrophic injury, but injuries that could be preventable?
Yeah. So when I'm teaching about passing, clearly later during the drills and also during the sparring later, we have rules that more than average try to pass the guard. But I'm not going to neglect leg locks, because then the bottom guy knows they cannot jump to my legs. They get lazy. But they know
Mm.
that most of the times they were passing the guard and they're developing those skills. But the threat of one time out of 10 they jump on your leg should be there. If you're really sloppy, I would take the leg. So you better keep your legs to yourself and let's do the passing. So we have a lot of those guiding rules in a sparring that I think it's a very terrible look when you do something in a class and then most people would not use it later in a sparring, because it's a new thing. So my thing is that I have to create rules that praise risky behavior, and that is trying new things that you learn in a class in a sparring. So usually, um, let's say if with some leg locks we did, you have to let them make, if they do a knee slide, try to grab the ankle, even if you don't want to, but try to grab the ankle so they can backstep. So you also feed them backstep. And if they do a backstep fall to leg lock, the resistance there is like maybe 60%, maybe. So you let them figure it out. Even like a couple of times in the beginning, you let them tap you more easily. And if they get a hang of it, you can raise resistance and not get tapped, resist more. But still, you give them you praise certain things, that you praise risky things, that you want them to do a backstep, because this is what we learned. So you just grab, even knowing that maybe it's a bad thing to do, but you grab and let them backstep. So that's one way to force it. Or let's say if we do leg locks, then I say more than average, go for legs and don't pass. And maybe sometimes I say like, okay, guys, like a bottom guy, for me to backstep better, I need the bottom guy play more outside de la riva. So for the backstep, so the bottom guy, more than average, try to go force yourself to go outside de la riva, even if it's not your game. But today you have to go. So also bottom guy is forced out of their comfort zone to figure out what the hell I'm going to do there. You have certain games there, and that it may expose them to force them to, adapt to that game also. And I actually need techniques here, because if I don't force them there, they don't think about it. So bottom guy has to kind of force. Okay, you can attack, but go play more outside de la riva. So I have more chances to go back steps. And if I pull off a backstep, resistance drops. Maybe de la riva is like, sparring speed and everything. But as soon as I get backstep, I fall to honey hole, whatever, inside senkaku, then resistance drops to 60. And then, I get to my position, and you have to kind of make it conceptually harder by time. So this is the way I force new habits. Then person can learn to, finish the heel hook or something. And they, as a guy that gave the backstep to them, you can develop your calmness and awareness in a leg lock, not freaking out, because the resistance dropped and it's not real anymore. Yeah. And as soon as the backstepper gets their like things going, and they can relax and start to attack better, you can go to resistance higher, and then even sometimes go 100%, in 100% or close to sparring. So, but I really find that if I force them also, the De La Riva guy, to be inside submission, to find the calmness, to learn to defend, to make it harder, because mostly themselves, they wouldn't make that choice. They would avoid, leg locks. They want to run out very fast, but I make them stay there. I make them be calm and aware that the submission is going to happen. And they both know, even if you get the submission, that they know in their mind, well, I was given that, because the resistance is dropped. But nobody's going to, like, ha, that I tap you, and then there's not going to be a discussion that something was given. And if you tap me a couple of times, I raise resistance. So it's fun for me to train also my defense, and fun for you to, train attacks. So
So
I
I
have
can
those rules.
okay, so I can see head coaches and gym owners that I've spoken to in the United States come back and say, "Preet, that's all great, but I have to deal with student retention, and there's a good chunk of my students that would much prefer to just come in and do randori, and putting all these rules on practice is going to drive them away because all they want to do is roll, and they're not that interested in skill development. And I need
But
to cater to them as much as I cater to the students that want to develop the skill."
why do you say that? Let's say if I roll, and then my rule will also be like, today more than average 2 backsteps. So, or even I can say, if you do and like, let's say if there's 6 minute roll, and then I say like, try to go 3 to 5 times to backstep, and after that you can do whatever you want. So I'm not neglecting the full roll. I'm not gonna, I know what you mean. I'm not gonna damage the experience. People understand
Well,
that
I'm
I'm
not
for.
saying you're damaging it. I'm giving you the point of view that I've heard from people. I'm
Yeah,
just saying, just to clarify, like this is in a way almost to be devil's advocate, because I'm more, me personally, I'm more on the side of you, because I'm all about skill development, and just rolling for rolling's sake without having any objective, to me is not, is like, when I go to roll, even if it's randori, I have specific objectives. They don't know what I'm doing,
yeah.
but I'm going to be trying to do certain things. But I'm just saying, I've heard wait, and maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's like an American mentality to some
I
degree,
don't think
but
so. I think it's misunderstanding, because then they misunderstand what the role is. Because I'm for that. Rolling is good. My class is anyway drilling and rolling heavy. Uh, half an hour we drill, and then we roll half an hour. But I think people appreciate the trade-off, because they know that it makes sense to that I can pull off the new thing that I just learned in a class, in a sparring. I think people want that. And I think if there's no rules in place that will favor taking those risks, and not getting like really punished by trying new thing, if I try a leg lock and you right away ruin everything, I will stop trying that. And then the class objective to actually get better in leg locks is not going to be fulfilled. So I think me as a coach, I have to have a good balance, that what I'm asking from people, that 2/3 of the role could be even like 60, 70%. Do whatever you want, but those 30%, whatever, 40% of times, I'm forcing you to try a new thing. And I think everybody has to find the reasonable ratio, that people that they want to roll, they understand that, oh, if I'm also like, let's say if we talked about the outside the riba and backstep, and then I say like, more than average. If you play a couple of times the riba, but I say more than average, play outside the riba, and then after that, your conscience is clear. You gave them chances to backsteps, and then you can play your own game. But at least a couple of times you gave them a backstep, yeah. So if somebody gets like, if both of you are getting a couple of times each roll backsteps, then it's already in a half an hour sparring. It's already enough backsteps that you tried. Some backsteps are not fed; they just happen because sparring happens, and some backsteps are fed to you. So the ratio of doing new things in a sparring, actually, after class, is pretty high. Understand what I mean? So then it's like, I think if the criticism is that what you say, then I'm saying that people are maybe using the ratio wrong. And if you just force people to not roll, not to have fun, and only do the stuff they learned in a class, maybe that's too much pushing. So the ratio should be real that everybody understands. Let's do like a famous saying. Let's do something for me and also for a group. If I only do something for me, let's say you're that partner, you go like, oh fuck this Derriva, I'm not gonna do it. Then people will not roll with you later because they know that you're not letting them to try new things that you just learned and you want to try in a sparring because that's the test. So they're going to look for different partners that are not assholes. So if you want to have good partners, then you need to do something for the group as a minimum requirement of the ratio, and then you deserve to do your own thing. And I think if the ratio is very good, everybody is willing to do the right thing. If I'm asking too much from people, like 80% do the outside the river, they go like, oh fuck this shit. I'm not gonna, understand what I mean?
Yep.
So I think it's a misuse of method. Then if the feedback would be like that, and if people are saying that, then clearly I will also disagree if the ratio would be 80-20 for a new technique as being 80. I think that ratio is overblown, and in some circumstances it could make sense if it's a very deliberate isolation class for certain skill, but for overall rolling, I think the ratio would be way too off. So I agree with that criticism, but fix the ratio.
Fix the ratio. Um, I've always thought because of partly because of probably my background, because I think with anything you have, your background influences a lot of your thought process and beliefs. But
Yep.
I've always thought it would be cool to apply the university paradigm to jiu-jitsu schools. What I mean by that is having semesters and saying for this semester we have a class focused on a subject. So for example, that subject could be leg entanglements 101 for 3 months. And then another section could be half guard passing. So instead of a student, and let's just say for the it makes more sense to look at this as, let's say, a colored belt. These are people that already have some established knowledge. I could totally see you applying this to white belts as well. You just, like anything, you have to take these courses in order to, like, if you want to take half guard passing, you have to take the basics class, like that's how universities do it. I can't go to a university and take quantum physics. I have to either have taken it or show that I know have,
Mm-hmm.
possess physics and all the prerequisites kind of knowledge. So having a system like that where you spend, let's say, a 3-month period on a topic, and that topic has prerequisites potentially. Do you think that's something that has potential? And do you think it's feasible given, as we've talked about, there's students that come casually twice a week. There's students that are very passionate and come 4 or 5 days a week. Do you think that's something that could be?
I do it.
You do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I,
how do you do it?
let's say we really a bit touched on it. So let's say I think I do it like a 2 to 3 month sections. You can do the same thing in a fundamental class that we do, where white belts train and up to blue belt. Everybody can join, but they're usually people that already finished the beginner's course. But to have two, up to two, I think, and in some cases three. I think in an advanced group you can maybe do it differently, but I think 2 month section is doable. Uh, Probably you should have some, drilling weeks between, or certain like a mindset off taking weeks. Understand what I mean?
Mhm.
Taking the mindset off, taking the mind off. Sorry, and I think it benefits. And then you can, build it slowly up. And the key is always what I've learned, and it's actually quite hard, is to teach as less as possible every class. So then it benefits everybody, because the bad thing what jiu-jitsu coaches do, and I'm talking about my experience, is you want to give them all your heart today, but you can't teach them jiu-jitsu everything today. Yeah, it's not gonna work. And then that means coaches will burn out and everything, and then you teach in one class 3 things, and then third is missing, and then next class the third comes to the class like 6 people, they have no understanding of what the fuck happened, and you go like, oh shit, I can't do a continuous classes because those people didn't join, and I have to start from the beginning again.
Mhm.
So that's why I think it's important to teach as less, literally as less as possible, as little as possible. that if you skip a class, it's retainable. You can just add this later. So I've done this now with certain leg locks and stuff. I still sometimes fail to teach less, but the key is to actually teach like maybe only one thing, one move, one transition, and then you just drill the context again. Drill it with a feedback, just drilling it. And with drilling, nobody minds if it's a one thing, because I think with this traditional jiu-jitsu class structure, you have to teach the way, it's half an hour warm up or 20 minutes, and then it's three techniques out of your ass. Sometimes they're connected, and then you roll. If you don't drill, if you don't resistance drill feedback, then you do a 10 minutes and people are bored. Oh, I did armbar from side control. Now what? Oh, now it's like a this lock, and now it's that lock, and then you drill. I think it's one of the worst training methods overall for a class. Maybe for some very specific narrow field, maybe it can doable, but I haven't found that why it's actually useful. So how I do it is, let's say maybe with a leg lock, let's say there's certain transition you go, and then I just show that transition. And then people, let's say they have done the other classes, and I just show this, and then we do a drill, 2 minutes, 2.5 each, and then with another drill, 2.5 minutes each, and then feedback. We fix mistakes, do another drill, and we train. We try to create that transition in that drill. That your partner has to create that transition. If you're good, they do it very fast, and if they're really good, do it super fast and everything. So we just drill this, and because it's a progressive resistance, and it's a game, and it's a failure is actual there present, you can drill that half an hour and not ever feel bored. And then it's only one thing you learned, but it was interesting because it was a play. And then new class comes in, new maybe after 2 days another class. And then if you miss the class, it's hard. It's super easy to teach you what actually happened, and then I teach you another thing. And it benefits the people that skip classes, and it benefits people that actually are taking classes, because they get to drill a lot, and the retention, retention ratio is through the roof, because they're drilling it so much with the resistance. So they're like memorizing it all the time. If you're just adding new technique, it's like, if you learn 3-6 things, like every class you have 3 techniques maybe, let's say some submissions or passing. Imagine learning in a week 6 new things in jiu-jitsu, even as a purple belt. It's like, how the fuck are we gonna do that?
Well, that was my point originally with the white belts, when I said you're teaching them all
Yeah.
these different submissions each day, and you gave me the
But
distinction between
then I
beginners
would
and.
yeah, but then I would say, like, if we have a beginner's course, let's say in Tuesday and Thursday, I'm gonna teach an armbar maybe in a Tuesday. I'm gonna teach a triangle in a Thursday. It's still better, it's 2 techniques. It's not like 2 techniques in a class already. So we're trying to keep the ratio down, and they're training the armbar, finishing armbar mechanics. Other guys resisting. So I even think I think it's still a lot, but it's still, I think it's acceptable ratio, and we're drilling a lot in that. But they still forget. But at least I'm making them realize what was submission, and then how to tap, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a little bit sweat going, but I'm trying to keep the ratio down, because even teaching 2-3 things in a class, sometimes it's hard. So that is a really big challenge. And many people argue that, like, let's say your criticism will say, oh, but people, I have to cater to people that come recreational grapplers, they come to the class, they want to learn techniques. And I think those people are completely, not even kidding about it, it's completely wrong. And I can show you how just doing our class about armbars, just about simple armbar, and day one, or let's say blue belt, white belts at the middle level, I can keep that class interesting with resistance training, progressive resistance with the feedbacks, and people go away actually, oh, I got to train this, I got feedback for me, not like overall, I got to try it in resisting opponents that make that harder, and this all prepared them to pull it off in a sparring, and then we have sparring rules that force certain positions and everything else. And there is no I'm kind of strict about it. There is no debate. Like, this is how we should do stuff. I know it sounds really like, oh, I'm the I know it, but I don't think the format of showing techniques, 3 techniques in a half an hour period, is like maybe in a seminar format, but even the way I do seminars is way different than I seen people. They do like in an hour, they do 4 or 5 techniques, just go and beginners go like after an hour.
Well, it's like you said, I think a lot of that is actually because the teacher it's I think in most places it comes from a good place. The teacher wants to share all this
Yes,
knowledge with them, but unfortunately, it took the amount of time it took the instructor to uh, attain that knowledge
yes.
is far more than what you could expect. Even if you taught it better than you were taught it to yourself, do you expect to be able to do that in an hour or 2 hour period is
And then
ludicrous.
I also the question is I would just ask people, and I don't know, maybe they've asked, but maybe they don't care, or maybe they just think it's normal. Imagine that most people are doing. I'm doing weekend seminars, because then I can teach people something, and it's a sections and stuff, not like sometimes it's a same topic, but sometimes it's cut. And but let's say people doing 3 hour seminars. I don't think I'm talking out of my ass, but we can talk about here like 10 to 15 techniques in that 3 hour time. Do you agree with me? Like in three
We're
hours
talking
seminar,
about is it possible? We're talking about if it's constructive.
no, let's say average. I would say that how seminar are taught. Let's say if it's a 3 hour seminar, averagely we can expect at least 10 techniques in those 3 hour time.
I mean, it depends on who the instructor is, but I can definitely
But you
see
know what
that
I
you
mean?
could do
Yeah,
that. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
understand. It's definitely possible
yeah.
to cover 10 techniques in that period
And
of
a
time.
lot of seminars are based on like just random techniques, just new techniques, new techniques. So I'm talking about that. And imagine that you learn in 3 hours 3 things that require context, timing, resistance, how to finish. And then I know it's emotion. I know, some famous person came and I got to take a picture with him and I learned something new. I had fun. I
Well,
understand it.
that's what it's all about. What you said right there, 9
Yes,
times out of 10 is getting the photo with the
yes.
with the
But the
celebrity.
problem is that I think both parties should be responsible that we as a clients, we should demand better product, because that product is not good for technique retention, because after a week you can't remember half of them and you don't have time to make it yours because your new techniques are coming already in your regular class. And we should demand that those, like, if I would be the person that would do 10 techniques in a, let's say, in 3 hours, I could imagine that me wondering, like, is it very useful? That are they actually going to use them, or do I have a mindset that even if they pick up one technique, this seminar has been worth it, and they forget the 9 of them? I would say I would be wasting my time if I would give them a technique buffet and I hope that just one technique would stick. Because if that's the mindset, I really honestly don't understand the mindset. Because why would I, as a very famous or whatever accomplished person, that I've gathered this information and teaching this with my passion, and then it's just 9 things just fall off right away? I would want my ratio of success or people doing my things and getting using those things later be higher, at least over half. That they would use it. So sometimes I don't understand. It's very hard for me to relate to those kind of techniques seminars. I understand why people like them, and sometimes they're saying, "Oh, it was a good class," and I'm holding my head like, "Oh, fucking hell, this was the worst class ever." But people, I know why people say it, so I'm looking for from the different perspective. But then if I'm asking them usually, like, do you understand that you're not gonna use like most of it in after a week? But then they go like, I don't care. So if that's their answer, I respect that. But I think it's also coaches that we have responsibility that, like, let's make it better. And I don't know how to justify those kind of seminars, that why they're good, because I'm a little bit thinking that those guys are wasting their time, because I think they should find like a better way to pass on their knowledge. Because for me it would be like the way I do seminars. I'm sad when you forget most of it what I did, because that's the way I do very drilling heavy seminars. We drill a lot. Uh, so it's very hard to forget me. And also the stuff I teach, I like to go like this way, that the stuff I teach, that, like, you most cases you will use it every class. So that's why I'm teaching those fundamental postures and stuff. So you can never roll without them in a next roll, so to speak. So the 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 probability of you getting better in them is very high. If I would teach you certain specific, then that I know that some people pick it up, but then I would also say, I probably have a disclaimer that if I would teach certain game, that I would have a disclaimer that why this is good. I think it's good to get, you see a game, let's say deep half guard game, you get exposed to that. Because we talk about top and bottom, but also, let's be honest, not everybody will keep playing the deep half guard game. But then, I have to be honest myself, to have a disclaimer. And if 20 people come to a deep half guard, it's gonna be like, over half of them not gonna use it. Maybe a couple of person will continue it. But also, I'm appreciating that if you teach a game, that most people get exposed, because it's very also dangerous. Let's say if you don't know what the lockdown is, you also get injured because of that, because you do something
Yeah.
stupid there.
That
So
happens at our gym a lot. They'll get the one white belt will find the
yeah,
YouTube video with
yeah,
lockdown and start doing it to everybody.
yeah. So I find that exposure is good, and but just as a game, and as a maybe you teach 5 to 10 techniques from the same game, then I also understand. It depends on hours you spend. Maybe in 3 hours, you have to drill and stuff and feedbacks. So I understand the game as a technique group, but just I've been in those seminars when it's random, literally random, and because the guy is good in random things, and they're teaching. So I'm like, how does that make sense? And so I think both of us as coaches and clients can be, we have to see those things, we have to understand, and we have to demand a better product. As a clients and coaches can go like, am I really using usefully their time to teaching random things? Because I'm feeling that I have to provide, and if you come to my seminar, I want to actually make your time useful. That you feel like after a week, or like everything is still good. Understand what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like when the seminars that I was lucky enough to attend in Iceland, where you taught, I think a lot, and I believe this is intentional on your part, but I'm not sure. I wasn't in your mind, but I feel like there was as much emphasis on the technique you were teaching as well as challenging kind of dogma and tradition within the jiu-jitsu community, specifically around teaching methodologies, and of course your clap, your 1 2 3 clap analogy. But the fact that you are always, yeah, and I don't know how intentional that was, but you always found a way to bring that up. To, in essence, I viewed you, like, my impression of you remind me of a lot of college professors I had, where part of what they wanted to do was just infuse you with critical thinking skills, so that you would be like, all right, I'm not going to take anyone's word for it, not even Preet's. I'm going to process it. I'm going to apply my own critical thinking, and I'm going to apply my logic, and I'm going to filter and essentially have a BS meter on things and say, okay, I think, this seems reasonable enough. This doesn't seem reasonable enough, that sort of thing. So obviously you're teaching the technique, but you are also teaching, hey guys, like, don't take my word for it. Don't take anyone's word for it. Have some reasoning, have critical thinking, apply
Yeah,
methodology.
you said it really nicely. So that is my goal. Sometimes I overdo it. I got also recently criticism of people being frustrated because I wanted to teach them how to learn things and how to be a better partner, and then doing techniques. So it didn't end up having a good ratio. And I appreciate the feedbacks. Also, people tell me that they ask like, "Are you willing to take my feedback?" I was like, "Bring it." And there was other people around also that they said like, "Do you mind if I do it publicly?" I was like, "No, bring it." I have to be example of. I always said like, if you have something to say, it's a constructive feedback, I will take it. And so that is what you said is true. And I'm planting those seeds, and sometimes I find coaches don't like them, because then they have to deal with that. That people are starting to question, why do you bow, why do you call them professor, why there's a clap, and then maybe also heard that people haven't thought about it before. Oh, why do we clap? Or why do I call you professor? I was like, yeah, you don't have to. Nobody calls me, in my gym. It's like, I'm Preet. I'm not even a coach or a trainer, whatever. It's just Preet. Why is that bad? Why it's like, oh, it's not or you have to show the respect or whatever. Who the fuck cares? I'm front of the line because I know more, and this stuff I'm teaching, it should be enough that people know that's why I'm front of the line. Having titles around, and first of all, it's a Portuguese language professor, in English context. So I just make, I'm poking people, and I think you said it very nicely that I'm making them question things, and if I don't see many people talking about those things, questioning teaching methods and stuff, and I've been approached by beginners and other stuff that are, oh, I never thought about it. Nobody's actually criticizing other black belts, and what they do, and I was like, exactly. So I'm. It's not a personal attack, but now also these days, some black belts, because they always know that I'm always looking at their classes in that way. So they're actually asking me like, Preet, what do you think? And then I'm giving them my honest opinion. What I think was good, what I would do differently, but I understand why they did it this way. And some coach in some camp was messing something up, and I was like, yeah, you had a hard time with that thing because you said it wrong, because people didn't get it. And then he spent like 20 minutes of explaining something that could have been explained in 10 minutes. So I'm happy that some people have approached me also. I know some people are super annoyed by it, and they don't like it, but it is what it is. So in a scientific world, you know, I think if I'm using that word right, then getting peer reviewed, getting criticized,
Sure.
getting your work taken apart by somebody is uh, is very well established, and that's what pushes them, and that's why you don't publish your work before you're really sure, mostly, yeah, that it's getting.
In theory, that's what should be
Yeah,
done.
yeah. But that's what I mean. That I think in jiu-jitsu, I think people are releasing their stuff. Sometimes even me. That's why I need those people around me that will call me out. That we have to call out people that are doing that could do better. And if I know that if somebody does a turtle class and if I'm around, it's always weird. And I enjoyed that Sven Groten actually did the Iceland class, and then he was talking about the claw, that wrestling claw
Mhm.
kind of get in.
Well, I actually saw that on YouTube, the claw ride
Yeah.
position.
So I think he mentioned that also, that we're not going to talk about how we get there, but it happens in transitions, and because we know that there's a pre-turtle, whatever. And I was okay with that disclaimer, because I think just getting the claw is, if I do a turtle, is really hard. But if you have a disclaimer, okay, this is what happens in a scrambling, you get that grip, and when you get it, what to do. But we're not going to do a setups to get those grips, because it will be a different class.
Correct.
And then it's like, oh, wonderful. All I need is that disclaimer, that then I know that people do not have so much wrong impression, that it just happens. Because we clearly have a defensive strategy to avoid that, and also setups to make it happen. So I enjoy that I consider it a little bit like my doings, in a way, that people are talking like this, because I'm being annoying for long by pointing those things out and saying certain things defensively. So it's nice to see, and I think it's very healthy also when coaches are talking about their things. What do you think about my class, and what you do differently? And I would love that. And putting, I think, also Aaron Milam in some Iceland class, I think it was 2 years ago. After the class, it was a backtake kind of thing, and he said, like, publicly from all the black belts, like, "What do you think about my class?" I was really surprised that he did it like publicly. Usually, people ask, personally. They come in and they talk to after class, to sit around, have a sip of coffee. But and then of course I couldn't say Aaron Milam that I love this class, but I said, like, in next class I will show you how to beat it. So I made a really Estonian joke, and I think Milam got it, but a lot of people were like, "Oh shit, you said what?" And but it was very, I enjoyed definitely Milam's class, and he was attacking. So my job would have been like, how to show it doesn't work when it doesn't work, and then we have a sport, his skill, my skill, and then somebody loses because there's pressure, time, speed, everything else. So and I enjoy that when people are putting themselves those vulnerable places that somebody would criticize their work. And I really feel that we should do it more often, because it only makes people expose their mistakes, and next time they do it better, But I think in some way, many, we can say authorities also like living in their bubble, and then everything they kind of
I
say is
mean,
true.
you're touching on something everyone has fragile egos,
Yeah,
and
I think
it's hard for people to
clearly,
take
yeah,
criticism not personally. Like, it's very hard for people to separate, you know, Preet the person and the relationship you have with that other person with Preet making a professional
yeah,
critique of something you're doing, and that's all walks of life, all professions, that
yeah.
people have very fragile egos.
And I guess this is one way to, I have to learn how to approach this, and maybe do it if I want to get my message through. If I do it very aggressively, I turn off, and then the result is not what I want. So this is my challenge to evolve, because clearly I don't have the best social skills because of my upbringing, and jokingly maybe being in a spectrum a little bit, you know.
Well, I
And
think you use that as I feel like you use that almost as a branding technique to make yourself more approachable. Because
yeah,
I don't believe any of those you might believe it, but I don't believe you have any deficiencies when it comes to social
yeah.
interactions or presentation
Because,
skills. I
the
think it's a
bluntness people are talking about, like, and I know what they're talking about. So kind of jokingly in a spectrum that I'm gonna like no, yes, and gonna, sometimes I've said something weirdly, and people have many cases taken it in a wrong way. So I'm like always like, huh. And the way I perceive myself, and they sometimes people say I'm saying I was nice. They was like, no, Preet, yeah, that was not nice. I was like, oh shit. And I have a certain like a disconnection the way people see me. I don't mind that. It's in my deathbed I think I get it right. But depends, my stoic upbringing, my being like in a Soviet times, and everything being not socially, so to speak, sounds very sad. I never had a lot of friends, and all those things. That's why I enjoy globetrotters and stuff, and interacting with people, because they help me to understand myself better. And and so if somebody listens to that, and wants to in the next seminar, whatever, and explain me things, and you know kind of, I always appreciate that, because they all make me understand me better, so to speak. And
yeah.
it's sometimes it's hard, it hurts sometimes, like if I said something and somebody go, Preet, that actually hurt me. I was like, but it wasn't my intention. And I clearly take, kind of offense of it to myself, that it was kind of, I feel bad later if I really hurt somebody. And then I have to, understand this. And but yeah, I social thing, it's weird for me at least.
So we as we kind of close things down, I really appreciate the time you spent with me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. We've gone just over 2 hours, and the time's flown by. But I want to give you all the time in the world to talk about your new endeavor,
Oh
defensivebjj.com. It's to me, it's going the way of where instructional material in the jiu-jitsu community should be going, which is, this kind of on-demand platform. I think the BJJ. I know you've worked with BJJ fanatics, and you have various instructionals with them, but I feel like their format is, unless they update it, is probably getting more and more passe. And I think having what you have, which is a platform with bite-sized pieces of information that's constantly growing, is probably more conducive for student learning and getting, you know, information organized and presented in a way that's easily digestible. Uh,
yeah.
tell me
So
about like what got you, like tell me all about it, and all the promotion and all the stuff. The floor is yours.
yeah. So anyway, actually, I want to thank you, because I think this was a different podcast. Not all of it, but I would even say half of it. I would say you asked different questions, because I've talked about training and everything else, but I think we went a little bit differently than I'm used to. So I think if I do a lot of podcasts, they tend to be always similar, So because people ask us, same questions, but I really felt I could talk differently in that sense about stuff. Anyway, so I appreciate that. But what the page is, I think, is the Defensive BJJ. I think it is, yeah. So it's defensivebj.com. It is tatpreachit.com. So Priit. It is priitflix.com, and it is also jitsvulkan.com. Yeah. So we had all the domains, and because the pre-chat happened like a, I think in early days even it was a little bit negative, because I did my pandas and turtles and I was annoying when I got to introduce to the club turtles and all the stuff, and so people were mentioning, this is like some weird pre-chat. But now actually it's a positive thing, and people are sending me messages and tagging me in Facebook, and I should see me doing this pre-chat. And because defensive maybe BJJ is still a bit more official, so there's that. We took I think we started to build this in July, and now it's 3 weeks out. I think the timing was perfect because I spent a year and a half traveling around, building a client base, basically traveling around the world and getting exposed and testing and everything else. So clearly, and also I have a reputation of knowing defensive stuff. People know me for those things. So that helps that I'm not talking out of my ass again, and the people trust me that I also will add things there that are defensively solid. So I have a in that sense reputation that it helps. Why defensive? Because again, this is what I'm known of. And I think to have a site that I would compete with Mendes Brothers and Calvaos would be a suicide. To have an online site as an Estonian black belt. So somehow in this very competitive field of instruction, first of all, many people have said to me, I haven't thought about it themselves, but as an Estonian black belt, I traveled the world doing jiu-jitsu, and I'm very demand, so to speak, that many people find it very surprising that I can have a living like this, so to speak. And in jiu-jitsu, somehow I have found a niche that basically nobody does, and it's super. I'm actually super happy about it, because it would be like a gazillion-dollar idea in that competitive field, that I really have my own voice and I really can separate myself from others. I know Wim is doing something similar, but he's more, I think in a very good way, he's more out there. He's like I don't know, I'm more fundamental would be bad to say, but I think Wim definitely helps, and I'm always interested of what he has to say. But he's doing more possibility oriented things, I would say, in that sense, but not in a bad way. But I don't think there's nothing like this in the market, and I think I have a following in a good sense, not in a cult way. I hope. And clearly I can help people, and only negative things I'm here is mostly towards me. Priit talks too much or something, like he's arrogant, or but nobody, let's say give it a 99.9%, people usually say good things about the stuff I do, like technique wise, turtles and pandas and stuff. So that is a good platform for pulling it off. So it's not my personal base, but what I do. And right now I think we have, I don't know, 70, 80, I don't know, videos there. And the good thing about the site is that I'm doing also narrated roles there. People can upload up to 10-minute roles, and it's I narrate them, and the ratio would be that I'm not going to narrate if you upload every week, because I'm going to narrate if you do your homework. So if you will upload a 10-minute video, and I will probably give you a half an hour answer, because I just finished it before this podcast. One guy posted 5 minutes, and I gave him back 27 minutes of narrated roles. And I'm expecting that you work on that. And next time, if you upload, maybe next month, or after maybe even like once in 2 months, I see improvements. Because if you start to overload the community, I will not do feedback, because I know you're not learning from your mistakes. So because motivation is down. So this is a free service. There's no I would have to narrate the roles. There's nothing that I'm very active in there, so to speak. And again, people that do those clips and upload them, they should know that they should do something for yourself and something for a community. So don't overload too much stuff, because you kill a community and people will start to criticize you and weed you out. So that's one of the things that I find people can use, and they're really surprised. The customer service and usually is like, "Oh, is that Priit on that site?" And he's narrating my roles, and it's $14.99 and it's 12.6 euros. And for that money, I think the value is through the roof because you can see other people rolling and narrated roles. You have technique stuff. We will talk about the coaching in some point. I will have coaching sections, how to run a class. It's not there right now. So the possibilities are endless, so to speak, and it's definitely because I'm feeling so strong about coaching. It's definitely going to be, sections of that. How to even teach my material to beginners, how to run classes. So I invite people to do the journey. It's enough information there already that they're already, I think, happy. And I will keep building it. And I'm not going to say it's going to last 20, 30, 50 years. I couldn't predict my life 3 years ago. And we go, and I will do my part, and we'll see what happens.
Where can people find you on the internet besides Defensive BJJ if they want to reach out to you?
Instagram is Jits Vulcan. So Vulcan with a C, like Star Trek. Jits Vulcan. Facebook, you can go Jits Vulcan also, or my name, Priit. Mihkelson, the Mihkelson. So I'm there. Just, I have my site, YouTube. I haven't figured out what to do with my YouTube. I have, already 3,500 followers there, but we're gonna figure it out soon. That how we're gonna incorporate to my site, and what kind of information will be free in YouTube and what will be behind paywall. Because I clearly want some information also to be free. I'm not being that asshole that now I can ask money and everything is now against the behind the paywall. So we'll figure it out. Probably Fanatics, where I'm not active, but I'm working with them. But so these days, I guess Facebook a little bit, but because I'm doing my site, so we have some forum things in building community. So I'm kind of trying to maybe funnel people to that, and because they're clearly paying for the service, so I feel also responsible giving them answers and interact there. So I find sometimes it's not a bad thing. I hope again nobody takes it wrong. I love talking to people when they send me messages in Instagram, in Messenger, and I'm sorry also because I get them so many these days that sometimes I don't have time to answer, and then I lose the track who I'm answered to. So, and I don't say that I have to. If you want to talk to me, come to my site. I think it would be rude, but clearly the site is my priority. People are paying money there, and I'm trying to manage also the interaction with Messenger in Instagram and also on my site. And it is getting to the limit right now. So I would have to work it out, and that's my problem because the reach seems to be already big enough that I have to figure something out because it's really hard to handle.
Are you
So
still accepting bookings for seminars at schools?
yeah, so right now is Corona time, so my my schedule was booked till the end of the year. 26th of October, I should have had a month and a half long Australia and New Zealand trip. Yet Corona kind of ruined that, so there's always next year.
So if
So
someone's interested, how would they reach out and do that?
uh, easiest I think is a messenger
Okay.
through Facebook, and at the moment I know the gyms are closed and they're everybody's like surviving and stuff. So a lot of the half, I think starting from April, all my chunk April to the December is kind of postponed to the next year. So I know people still want to do it, but they just can't. But yeah, if you're interested, probably there's so much free information, so you can learn from there. Some people say it's even too much free information out there that sometimes they don't. Oh, but people don't invite you for seminars because there's so much stuff out there already. But I actually see otherwise because people. I'm not that famous in a competition scene, and people getting more known with stuff I do. I haven't. I have actually more work. So not right now, so to speak, but I had. So I don't. It doesn't have backfire. It hasn't backfired yet. That sorry, being that much information out there for free. So yeah, that was a rant about that. So defensivebjj.com, and no strings attached. So cancel anytime, monthly or annually, whatever. So super easy. But I think I still think that a selling point for 12.6 euros a month. I think people will be surprised of what they're getting. And we didn't go for like 25 and stuff. And some people have said, "Oh, Preet, I'm lucky that I get your privates in that price what I sell my privates, that they're not 250 yet, 250 euros." I was
Mhm.
like, I would be shame of asking that money, but I get messages that I don't understand how famous I am yet, So people are all, I think the value for people to get to that site is, through the roof, so to speak. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I think I had like some
So
thought.
defensivebjj.com,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of other web addresses that are even more funny
Yes.
that also connected. I
Yes.
want to say this just in closing. Just that time I spent in Iceland taking the first class I took with you was I had no idea who you were.
What?
I had no idea. I had no idea who you were. This is my first
See,
Globetrotters camp,
see.
and I had shown the schedule to one of my training partners here at my gym, and I said, "What classes would you like to take if you were going?" Because he wasn't going; it was just me. And the one that caught his eyes was how to use underhooks better
Hmm.
when coming up, which your class was all about not using underhooks. Well, not
Yeah.
using underhooks, but not giving underhooks and getting
Yeah.
Darst and Marston.
Yeah.
And my first impression of you was I didn't know you were Estonian. I just thought this was like some Russian gulag wrestling instructor, and I liked the way you broke things down. It reminded me of how I've been coached in the past in other sports, and I appreciated it. It seemed like you were very pragmatic and practical in terms of my first impressions. Like, this is not an instructor that was going to teach you a 12 move berimbolo sequence to the back. This is an instructor that says, in the heat of battle, you're lucky if you can do two moves successively correctly against a fully resisting opponent. So, what is the most direct way to achieving the result? So, that was my first impression. And then, of course, you went into your no clapping, you went into some methodology talk, and I was like, okay, this guy has some interesting thoughts, and uh, I can understand where he's coming from, and I agree with what a lot of he's saying. So then I attended as many of the other ones that you offered there. I was actually your uke for some of the armbar, the late
Yeah.
armbar escape, which was fun. And I just want to say, personally, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, what you've exposed me to in terms of defensive postures, while I don't fully incorporate your, all the various positions, whether it's the hawking, running man, uh, a lot of my success defensively has come from some of the statements you've made and some of the concepts you've introduced to me. And the fact, not that in my case, I think I really am loyal to my coach, and I think he's phenomenal. Uh, the fact that you emphasize things the way you did made me bring them higher in importance in my mind, and made me become a better grappler defensively, even if it's something as simple as don't give underhooks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds silly, but
Yeah.
so in that regard, I want to thank you for helping me in that regard. I hope to see you on the mat at some point in the future. I know I think a lot of people are hoping to meet up with their buddies across the world, and it's been a
Yeah.
kind of a weird year. But Preet, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining
Welcome.
us, and I really appreciate it.
Me too. So
All
thank
right,
you.
awesome.